Humanity has spent decades listening to the universe. Most of what we hear is static, background noise, natural radiation. The ordinary hum of a cosmos that does not care whether anyone is paying attention. But sometimes, something appears that doesn't fit. A signal, a sound, a transmission. Brief, unexplained, and never fully understood. What makes these anomalies so difficult to dismiss isn't that they are impossible to explain, it's that the explanations, when they arrive, often feel incomplete. Scientists record the data, file the reports, and move on, but the questions remain, sitting quietly at the edge of what we know. These are 5 signals humanity still cannot fully explain. Some came from deep space, some from the bottom of the ocean, some from a radio tower somewhere in Russia that nobody talks about publicly. In each case, something was transmitting, and in each case, the full story is still missing. We don't know what to call these things: anomalies, interference,
or something else entirely. What we do know is this: the universe is louder than it appears, and we are only now beginning to understand what we're hearing. Signal 1. The WOW signal, August 15th, 1977. On August 15th, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up something unusual. The telescope was called Big Ear. It was part of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Its entire purpose was to listen to the sky and look for patterns. On that night, it found one. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds. That was not a coincidence. It was the precise window the telescope could observe any single point in the sky as the Earth rotated beneath it. It arrived on a narrow-band frequency, specifically near 1,420 megahertz, the hydrogen line. This matters. The hydrogen line is the frequency at which hydrogen atoms naturally emit radio waves. Hydrogen is the most common element in the universe.
If any civilization wanted to choose a universal frequency for communication, a channel that any technologically capable listener would know to monitor, the hydrogen line would be the logical choice. Scientists had predicted this for years. If a transmission ever came from deep space, it might look exactly like this: narrow band, strong signal, near the hydrogen line. And then, 3 days later, an astronomer named Jerry Eman was reviewing the printout. He circled the data, and in red pen he wrote a single word in the margin: "Wow." That annotation became the signal's name. It has been called the WOW signal ever since. The WOW signal has never been detected again. Astronomers pointed the telescope back at the same region of sky. They listened again, many times over many years. Nothing. This is where the story becomes difficult. If the signal was a natural phenomenon, a pulsar, a gas cloud, some natural radio emitter, it should have been detectable again.
Natural sources repeat. They follow patterns. They don't appear once, perfectly, and then disappear. The signal was also far stronger than most natural radio sources, approximately 30 times stronger than typical background noise. And it came from a direction in space where no known radio-emitting object has since been identified. There was no satellite in that position, no aircraft, no transmitter on Earth that could explain it. The data is clean, the data is real, and it has no confirmed source. In 2017, a team of researchers proposed that the signal may have originated from a pair of comets passing through that region of space. The theory suggested that hydrogen gas surrounding the comets could have produced a radio emission matching the signal's characteristics. Some researchers accepted this as a plausible explanation. Others were less convinced. Comets, they noted, are not typically known as radio sources at that frequency.
And the specific narrowband nature of the signal was difficult to reconcile with a diffuse hydrogen cloud around a comet. The debate continues in academic circles. There are also those who suggest, carefully and without claiming certainty, that the signal could have been an artificial transmission, not necessarily made by humans. This is not a fringe position. SETI researchers have acknowledged publicly that the WOW signal is the most compelling candidate for an extraterrestrial radio signal ever recorded. That is not the same as saying it was made by extraterrestrials, but it is also not nothing. No formal scientific consensus exists on the origin of the WOW signal. It remains officially unexplained. The signal appeared once. It matched almost every criterion scientists had defined for an artificial extraterrestrial transmission. And then the universe went silent again.
Whether it came from comets, from some unknown natural phenomenon, or from something else entirely, no one has been able to say with certainty. The printout still exists. The data is still there. The red ink circle is still there. And the source is still unknown. Signal 2, the Bloop, Pacific Ocean, 1997. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, was running a network of underwater hydrophones across the Pacific Ocean. These sensors had been placed there during the Cold War to monitor for submarine activity. By the 1990s, they were being used for scientific research. In the summer of that year, the sensors picked up an extremely powerful, low-frequency sound. It was detected across a range of thousands of kilometers. That alone is remarkable. Sound must be extraordinarily powerful to travel that distance underwater and still be detectable. NOAA scientists analyzed the recording. They confirmed it was louder than any known biological sound source.
It was also louder than many mechanical or geological sources they could identify. The sound had an unusual rising quality, a characteristic that NOAA scientists described as resembling the profile of a living creature. They named it the Bloop. The scale of the Bloop was the problem. Blue whales are the largest animals on Earth. They produce some of the loudest biological sounds in the ocean, but their calls are not loud enough, not nearly loud enough, to explain the Bloop. No known marine animal is. The sound was detected simultaneously by hydrophone arrays separated by enormous distances, suggesting the source was extraordinarily loud, or potentially located in a region of the ocean where sound travels with unusual efficiency. The precise origin point was triangulated to somewhere in the South Pacific, west of the southern tip of South America. That region of the ocean is remote and largely unexplored. For years, nobody could identify what had made a sound that powerful from that location in that depth of ocean. The explanation that eventually gained acceptance among NOAA scientists came not from biology, but from glaciology. In 2005, and in subsequent research, scientists concluded the Bloop was most likely caused by cryoseismic activity. Specifically, large sections of Antarctic ice cracking, shifting, or calving into the ocean. This process, sometimes called an ice quake, can produce extremely powerful low-frequency sounds that travel vast distances through the ocean. The triangulated origin of the Bloop was consistent with Antarctic ice activity, and the sound profile, on closer analysis, was consistent with known ice-related acoustic signatures. Most of the scientific community now accepts this explanation. There is also a popular theory, largely circulated online, suggesting the bloop could be connected to unknown creatures living in the deep ocean.
This is not supported by current scientific evidence. The deep ocean does contain many undiscovered species, but no known biological mechanism could produce a sound at that amplitude. There are also geological explanations. Large underwater landslides or volcanic activity that have been proposed as alternatives. None of these have been definitively ruled out. The ice explanation is widely accepted, but it arrived years after the initial recording. In the interval, the bloop became one of the most discussed, unexplained sounds in modern history, because it touched something deep, not just in the ocean, but in the way people think about what might be living down there. More than 95% of the Earth's oceans remain unexplored. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than of the bottom of our own seas. Scientists eventually concluded that cracking Antarctic ice most likely made a noise that powerful beneath the Pacific. But for years, nobody knew.
And for a moment, a sustained, serious moment in scientific circles, people genuinely wondered whether something enormous was moving in the dark below. The bloop was eventually explained, but the ocean was not. Signal 3, UVB-76, the Russian buzzer, 1970s to present. Somewhere in Russia, a radio station has been broadcasting continuously since at least the 1970s. It transmits on shortwave frequency 4,625 kilohertz. You can listen to it right now. Anyone with a shortwave radio receiver or even certain internet-connected applications can tune in. What they will hear is a buzzing sound, repetitive, monotonous, uninterrupted, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for decades. The station has been assigned various names by radio enthusiasts who have monitored it over the years. The most common is UVB-76. It is also called, informally, the buzzer. At irregular intervals, sometimes months apart, the buzzing stops. A voice appears.
The voice reads aloud a series of words and numbers. A typical transmission might sound like a name followed by a number, followed by another name. The meaning of these sequences, if they have one, has never been publicly confirmed. Then the buzzing resumes. The Russian government has never issued a formal public explanation of the station. Its exact purpose remains officially unacknowledged. What makes UVB-76 unusual is not just its existence, it's its persistence. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. The infrastructure of that era has largely been dismantled, repurposed, or abandoned. UVB-76 has continued broadcasting. Radio enthusiasts have tracked what appear to be multiple physical locations for the transmitter over the years, suggesting the station has been moved, or that its infrastructure has been maintained and updated. In 2010, a significant change occurred. The station's signal temporarily disappeared. When it returned, the voice messages became more frequent.
The format of the transmissions changed slightly. Nobody publicly announced why. In the years since, researchers and hobbyists have cataloged hundreds of transmissions. Some patterns have been identified in the sequences. Some have not. The station continues to broadcast at this moment. It has never explained itself. There are several credible theories about UVB-76's purpose. The most widely cited among analysts of military communications is that it functions as a numbers station. Number stations are a well-documented Cold War-era phenomenon. Shortwave radio transmitters used to send encrypted messages to field agents or military units. The receiver would already possess the key to decode the sequence. An intercepted message would be meaningless to anyone without that key. This model is consistent with the format of UVB-76's voice messages. Short, structured sequences that could theoretically carry operational instructions.
A second theory, which has been discussed among military researchers, is that UVB-76 functions as a dead hand, or check-in signal. Under this model, the station's continuous broadcast serves as a confirmation that certain military systems are operational. If the signal ever stops, it might trigger or authorize a predetermined response. This theory is speculative. No verified documentation of such a system connected to UVB-76 has been made public. A third, simpler explanation is that the station is used for radio spectrum management, keeping a frequency occupied to prevent others from using it. The buzzing itself, under this theory, is simply a placeholder. None of these explanations are mutually exclusive. All of them are unconfirmed. There is a community of people, distributed across many countries, operating under pseudonyms on internet forums, who have monitored UVB-76 continuously for years. They record every transmission. They compare notes.
They attempt to decode the voice messages. So far, no confirmed decryption has been published. What is striking about UVB-76 is that it does not feel like a mystery from the past. It is happening now. The buzzing is active. The infrastructure exists. Someone is maintaining it. Most of the time, the station only buzzes, but sometimes, a voice appears from the static, reads a sequence of meaningless words and numbers, and disappears again. Whatever it means, nobody outside of whoever is operating it appears to know. And they have not said. Signal 4. The Apollo 10, Space Music, May 1969. In May 1969, 2 months before the Apollo 11 moon landing, NASA sent Apollo 10 on a dress rehearsal mission. The crew, Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan, flew to the moon, tested the lunar module, and came closer to the surface than any humans had yet been. During the mission, the crew spent approximately 1 hour on the far side of the moon.
On the far side, there is no communication with Earth. Radio signals cannot pass through a body of that size. The crew was completely isolated. During this period of isolation, the astronauts heard something in their communications equipment. A sound they did not recognize. A whistling, almost melodic noise, heard through their headphones, apparently through the spacecraft's radio system. One of the crew members can be heard on the recording, asking whether the others heard it. They did. They discussed it, and they discussed whether to report it. The recording of this conversation was archived by NASA. It remained classified, not publicly released, for decades. It was eventually declassified and released, and became the subject of a 2016 Science Channel documentary. Several aspects of the incident have drawn sustained attention. First, the sound is real. It exists on the recording. It is audible.
Second, the astronauts were experienced professionals, trained to stay calm
to assess, and to report anomalies accurately. They did not dismiss the sound. They documented it on the recording. They noted that it was strange. Third, the fact that they discussed whether to report it is in itself notable. Astronauts are trained to report everything. The fact that they paused, even briefly, to consider whether to mention an unexplained sound suggests it was not immediately obvious to them that a mundane explanation existed. Fourth, the recording was not publicly released for many years. NASA has not extensively explained why this particular archive remained classified for as long as it did. These details, individually, are each explainable. Together, they have generated significant interest. NASA's official explanation is that the sound was caused by radio interference between the lunar module's VHF radio system and the command module system.
When the two spacecraft were in close proximity, as they were during this phase of the mission, their radio systems could interact and produce interference patterns. This explanation is technically plausible. Radio interference between proximate transmitters is a well-understood phenomenon. Engineers who reviewed the mission records have stated that this interference could produce the kind of sound the astronauts described. Some researchers who have examined the recording and the mission data accept this explanation as sufficient. Others note that the astronauts themselves, who were experienced with their equipment and with the sounds it produced, appeared not to immediately recognize the sound as interference. Whether that hesitation reflects genuine uncertainty about the source or simply the disorientation of being alone on the far side of the moon is not clear from the recording alone.
The Apollo 10 incident is perhaps most powerful as a document of what it means to be somewhere that no human had ever been before. The far side of the moon is one of the most isolated places a human being has ever occupied. There is no Earth above the horizon. There is no signal from home. There is only the spacecraft, the crew, and the black silence of space. In that context, an unexpected sound takes on a specific quality. The astronauts laughed about it on the recording. Nervous laughter, perhaps, or the genuine laughter of people who have found something strange and don't yet know what to make of it. But while orbiting the far side of the moon, completely alone, they listened to something moving through the static of space. NASA's explanation may be correct. The interference model is real and documented. But the experience of those three men, in that moment, in that silence, remains something that no technical explanation can fully account for.
Signal 5. Fast radio bursts, discovered 2007, ongoing. In 2007, a researcher named Duncan Lorimer was reviewing archival data from the Parkes Observatory in Australia when he found something unexpected. A burst of radio energy. Extremely brief, extremely powerful. It lasted only a few milliseconds, but in those milliseconds, it released more energy than the sun emits in approximately 3 days. It had originated from somewhere far outside our galaxy, billions of light years away. This was the first recorded fast radio burst, now known as an FRB. Since then, astronomers have detected hundreds more. They come from all directions. They last milliseconds. Each one carries an enormous amount of energy, far more than any known stellar process can straightforwardly explain. Some fast radio bursts appear only once. Others repeat. A source known as FRB 121102 has produced hundreds of detected bursts. Some of its repetitions appear to cluster in time, suggesting a possible pattern.
The field of fast radio burst research has expanded significantly. Dedicated telescopes have been built or repurposed to detect them. And as detection capabilities improve, astronomers are finding that fast radio bursts may be among the most common, powerful radio events in the universe, just previously invisible to us because our instruments weren't sensitive enough to find them. The fundamental anomaly with fast radio bursts is energy. The universe does produce extreme radio events,
pulsars, magnetars, gamma-ray bursts, but fast radio bursts don't fit cleanly into any single existing category. Their duration is measured in milliseconds. Their energy output is measured in the equivalent of the sun's energy release over days. This combination, that much energy, that quickly, from that far away, does not have a fully agreed upon explanation. The repeating bursts complicate things further.
One-time events might be easier to explain as catastrophic events. Something that occurs once, destroys its source, and is not repeated. But repeating fast radio bursts cannot come from a one-time catastrophic event. Something is producing them again and again. The patterns observed in some repeating sources have generated significant interest. Some researchers have published analyses suggesting that certain bursts cluster in time windows that appear non-random. Whether this represents a genuine physical periodicity, a rotation period, an orbital period, something else, or a statistical artifact, is actively debated. The leading scientific explanation for fast radio bursts involves magnetars, a type of neutron star with an extremely powerful magnetic field. In April 2020, a fast radio burst was detected from within our own galaxy, originating from a known magnetar called SGR 1935 plus 2154.
This was the first time an FRB had been traced to a source inside the Milky Way, and the first time it had been connected to a magnetar with reasonable confidence. This supports the magnetar hypothesis for at least some fast radio bursts. However, it has not resolved all the questions. Whether magnetars can explain every observed FRB, particularly the extremely energetic ones from billions of light years away and the ones that repeat with apparent periodicity, remains an open area of research. Other proposed mechanisms include flare stars, superconducting cosmic strings, and collisions between compact objects like neutron stars. There is also a paper published in a peer-reviewed journal by researchers at Harvard that raised the possibility that some fast radio bursts could, theoretically, be consistent with energy sources used by advanced civilizations. This was framed as a hypothesis worth investigating, not a conclusion. It was not widely accepted as the primary explanation.
But it was published, and it has been cited. It remains at the outer edge of the scientific conversation, not in the center of it, but it has not been dismissed. What fast radio bursts represent above everything else is a reminder of scale. The wow signal came from a direction in space. The bloop came from the Pacific. UVB-76 comes from somewhere in Russia. The Apollo 10 sound came from inside a spacecraft. Fast radio bursts come from billions of light years away. They are not anomalies at the edge of human experience. They are anomalies at the edge of the observable universe. Something is producing bursts of energy powerful enough to cross that distance, arriving here, detectable, registered, and still not fully understood. We detect them, we record them, we build theories to explain them, but the full picture has not yet emerged. Somewhere in deep space, something is transmitting.
And we are only beginning to understand what we're hearing. If understanding is even the right word for where this science currently stands. 5 signals, 5 different origins, 5 different kinds of not knowing. What connects them is not a conspiracy. It's not a hidden truth that someone is suppressing. It's something older and stranger than that. It is the basic condition of listening to a universe that is far larger, far older, and far more active than any single human lifetime can fully comprehend. We have instruments now that our grandparents could not have imagined. We can detect radio waves from billions of light years away. We can hear sounds from the bottom of the ocean. We can record the conversations of astronauts on the dark side of the moon. And still, there are things we can hear but cannot explain. Humanity has always believed that understanding the universe would make it feel smaller, more manageable, more knowable. But sometimes, the more we listen, the stranger it becomes. Signals in deep space, sounds beneath the ocean, voices hidden in static, whistling in the headphones of astronauts who were farther from Earth than almost any human being has ever been. Most mysteries eventually dissolve under explanation. The bloop was ice. The Apollo 10 sound was probably interference. UVB-76 is probably a military communication system from a different era that nobody has bothered to publicly explain. Probably. But some signals remain at the edge of understanding. Not because the truth is being hidden, but because the truth hasn't finished arriving yet. And in the meantime, the universe transmits. We listen. We record. We file reports. And somewhere out there, something is still broadcasting into the dark, whether or not anyone is listening.